tell me that I'm never gonna make it. They want me to do something that could make sense. They hate when I keep dreaming I'll be famous, but I don't give a fuck, I'ma keep chasing. I got all this potential that's deep inside of me, but they hate when you're successful cause they try to be. They sit there being judgmental because you're trying things.
Baz Luhrmann talks Faraway Downs, dorky DiCaprio, and why he wouldn't make a Madonna biopic after Elvis. The filmmaker revisits Romeo and Juliet, Moulin Rouge, and Strictly Ballroom in our latest director's reel. While the rest of the world spent our collective COVID-19 pandemic-caused lockdown growing sourdough starters or getting really into puzzles, Baz Luhrmann pursued a different hobby, transforming his 2008 feature film, Australia, into the 6-chapter saga Faraway Downs, which is currently streaming on Hulu. But don't call this new version the director's cut of Luhrmann's period Outback romance, which pairs Nicole Kidman and Hugh Jackman as squabblers-turned-lovers whose passion spans a continent and a class divide. I understand people going, I guess that's a director's cut, and in no way is that true. The Australian filmmaker behind hits like Moulin Rouge and Elvis tells Yahoo Entertainment. It's an experiment, and depending on how it goes it might have implications for other filmmakers going forward, as well as implications for the relationship between the theatrical experience and the episodic experience. Baz Luhrmann talks Faraway Downs, Moulin Rouge and Elvis in our latest director's reel. Photo illustration, Yahoo News, photos, Everett Collection, Getty Images, photo illustration, Yahoo News, photos, Everett Collection, Getty Images. Luhrmann isn't the only filmmaker who has dabbled in creating separate versions of a single work for theaters and streaming services. Quentin Tarantino previously cut a 4-episode extended version of his 2015 Western, The Hateful Eight, for Netflix, and Ridley Scott has a longer version of his Apple TV Plus produced historical epic, Napoleon, prepped for its streaming debut. But Faraway Downs is perhaps the most ambitious version of this experiment, with Luhrmann remixing the 2.5 million feet of film he shot 15 years ago into a story that's both familiar and new. I must have been thinking about episodic television or something, the director jokes about his foresight. But when I started looking at the film as episodic, I realized I'd be able to lean into the underlying theme of the idea, which is that you really can't own land and you can't own a child or a relationship. You can experience it, but in the end the only thing you can own is your story. Turning Australia into Faraway Downs allowed Luhrmann to add a new ending and enhance existing character and story beats. It also afforded him the opportunity to rewrite his own narrative with the film, which he describes as fraught and contentious the first time around. I felt unhappy about the way we brought it to the audience in America, he says of the movie's rough journey to US theaters in 2008, where it met with mixed reviews and disappointing box office. It was a completely different world back then. You'd spend $50 million to open a movie, and you were dead or alive within 48 hours. So that pressure led us to do some radical compressions. Nicole Kidman and Hugh Jackman star in Faraway Downs, a 6-part streaming version of Baz Luhrmann's 2008 movie, Australia. 20th Century Studio / Hulu, courtesy of 20th Century Studio. What's strange is that Australia is still my biggest film in Europe by far, bigger than Elvis, Luhrmann adds. So you do have these audiences who have a connection to it. While Luhrmann didn't shoot any additional material with Kidman or Jackman for Faraway Downs, he reveals that both actors did record new dialogue for the streaming version, and got to watch their younger selves in the process. At least they weren't looking at themselves de-aged by AI, the director says with a laugh. It was them on film. I should put a sticker on the series, these actors are all natural and shot on film. For our latest career-spanning director's reel, we chatted with Luhrmann about his signature Red Curtain trilogy, Strictly Ballroom, Romeo and Juliet and Moulin Rouge, which are all connected by theatrical motifs rather than a continuous narrative and characters, and why he won't be following up Elvis with a Madonna biopic. Strictly Ballroom, 1992. Tara Morris and Paul Mercurio in a scene from Strictly Ballroom. Miramax / courtesy Everett Collection, copyright Miramax / courtesy Everett Collection. Gather Round Children, And your Gen X/millennial ancestors will regale you with stories of a time when it wasn't cool to be musical theater geeks. That's why 90s teenagers with a passion for song and dance clung so tightly to Strictly Ballroom, Luhrmann's feature film debut, and, along with 1994's The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, one of the decade's defining made-in-Australia music-filled productions. Young kids won't get that today, Luhrmann agrees. Now, if you're not a nerd, you're not cool. But back then we were not seen. I was trying to make a film that was universal, but I was certainly a theater-loving geek, and I wore those credentials on my sleeve as I told that story. As Luhrmann tells it, Strictly Ballroom, which tells the Dirty Dancing-esque story of a would-be ballroom dance champion and his inexperienced new partner, came very close to not being seen. The film was dumped in one theater here in Australia. The director remembers of its inauspicious debut in his native land. And when we lost that theater, the owner said, "Not only is this the worst movie I've ever seen, but you've destroyed Pat Thompson's career." An acclaimed stage and screen actress in Australia, Thompson delivers a delightfully larger-than-life performance as the aspiring champ's overbearing mother. She died of an aneurysm before the film's international release and her own Best Actress victory at Australia's version of the Oscars. It's a great sadness, and I always try to take an opportunity to celebrate her, Luhrmann says in tribute. Fortunately, the shoestring-budgeted production found fortune and glory when it danced its way into the 1992 Cannes Film Festival and bowed to cheers, applause and a global distribution deal. Even then, though, Luhrmann says that he sensed a vintage jocks versus nerds divide in reactions to the movie. Some critics would really embrace the idea that I was taking an older theatrical cinematic form and playing with it. But others were like, "What's up with this guy? And what's up with the crazy close-ups?" Romeo and Juliet, 1996. Claire Danes and Leonardo DiCaprio play Shakespeare's star-crossed lovers in Romeo and Juliet, 20th Century Fox/Courtesy Everett Collection. Copyright 20th Century Fox/Courtesy Everett Collection. Dorky isn't the first word that comes to mind when you think of 90s-era Leonardo DiCaprio. But the Titanic heartthrob is severely, and hilariously, game-deficient in Luhrmann's version of Romeo and Juliet's immortal balcony scene. Watching DiCaprio's Romeo awkwardly struggle to avoid detection by Claire Danes' dreamy Juliet reminds you that William Shakespeare's star-crossed kids really are just kids. For the record, Luhrmann gives all the credit to his leading man for that take. Leo is very text-based, and when we looked at the text, we saw that Romeo is just a geeky kid who is coming to know about love and relationships and coming of age. He's not cool. It's not like, "Hey, Juliet, come up to my balcony." It's often a misstep in that role for actors play the romance or the result as we call it, the director continues. Whereas if you look at the text, what it's telling you by the cadence of it is that he's got this out-of-control love. Like, I'm going to say this, and I hope it comes out the right way, but he's really a silly boy taking an enormously dangerous risk. He's crazy in love, but not in love. He's just driven to see this girl again, and that's why he's hiding. That said, DiCaprio's Romeo does eventually get some romantic swagger going when he and Juliet adjourn to the pool for some aquatic nookie. But Luhrmann found a way to add a geeky flourish to that moment as well. I shot it one way the first time, and then I went back and reshot it where his goofiness results in him falling into the pool. Then, when they're in the pool, it allows for this kind of maturing romance or passion to fall into their characters. It looks like an obvious choice, but good choices always look obvious retrospectively. Moulin Rouge, 2001. Kidman and Ewan McGregor in a scene from Moulin Rouge. 20th Century Fox/Courtesy Everett Collection. Copyright 20th Century Fox/Courtesy Everett Collection. The Red Curtain trilogy took a final bow in spectacular fashion with Luhrmann's kaleidoscopic oh-so-early 2000s movie musical. Certainly, no words in the vernacular can describe the great event of watching Ewan McGregor and Nicole Kidman play all the hits, from All You Need Is Love to Your Song, in the mixtape-tastic Elephant Love medley for the very first time. We set out with this preposterous notion of, how do you make McGregor seem like a genius? Luhrmann says of that medley's origins. And then we thought, what if, when he opens his mouth, well-known popular songs come out? We got that device, but then we had to go and break a lot of rules. Specifically, Luhrmann and his collaborators had to break the existing rules surrounding music licensing, which weren't ready for the looming arrival of now-standard mashup culture. The director says that Elton John, who continues to find ways to bring his back catalog to fresh life via collaborations with Dua Lipa and Britney Spears, was the first artist to help break the logjam. Elton really led the charge, Luhrmann recalls. I didn't know him at the time, he's now a great friend, but he said, "This is the best idea ever. Don't worry, I'll make it happen." What's amazing is that the musicians themselves were the ones who went, "This is great. I want my song to be used." No one had mashups like the Elephant Love medley at the time. There was no precedent for T.